Hi! Oh my gosh, I am so happy to see you. You have no idea. These past few days have been pretty busy for me, so to be here and to meet you right now is just so amazing. It's such a nice break from everything. Um, please sit down, sit down. Um, I did, while I would love a general catch up with you, I did want to talk to you about something specific. I wanted to talk about something that happened to me a few years ago. And it's something I've been thinking about a lot recently. And um, I was hoping I could share that with you, maybe? Yeah? Thank you so much. Um, I've never actually told this story in full before. I mean, I've mentioned it briefly to people, but, I've never told the full story. So, I'm sorry if I ramble a bit and if I seem a bit unorganized when I tell this. It's merely because I've never told it before, so I'm sorry if I stumble on my words while I'm telling this story. I'll try my best. So, when I was 17, I was in college. And at that point, I hadn't had any experiences with death in my life. There hadn't been any family deaths. There'd been some extremely close calls, but luckily nobody actually passed away. So at that point, all there had been were close calls. Nobody in my family had actually passed away, and none of my friends had either. When I was in college, I had two close friends. One was a girl named Michelle, and the other was a boy named Oliver. And both of them smoked, but I didn't, and I still don't. My health anxiety would never allow me to do that. So, because they smoked, we would often go to the smoking shelters on the college campus. We'd go to the one at the back of the campus. There was one at the front and then one at the back. We'd go to the back one. And we would pretty much go there every day. Obviously, I didn't go there to smoke, but I went there just to kind of keep them company, and I went there to just hang out with them, spend time with them. And because we went there every day, pretty much, we would see some regular faces. We'd see people who were there all the time, and we got to know those people very well. But there were also people who would go to the shelter, but they weren't there all the time, like the regulars were. They'd show up kind of semi-often, they'd show up frequently, some infrequently, but these types of people weren't there all the time like the regulars were. But they drop in enough just so we could recognize them, if that makes sense. And one boy who was like that, who wasn't a regular but did go there sometimes, was a boy named Liam. And Liam, I'll admit, I didn't know much about him, and I honestly still don't. He was a photography student, and I think he may have been a music student as well. Now that I think about it, because he played the ukulele, and I remember there was this one time me and Oliver were going down to the smoking shelter, and all we saw one day was a bunch of the people at the shelter sitting down cross-legged on the floor, and Liam was there with them, sitting down cross-legged, and he had his ukulele, and he was playing his ukulele, he was playing songs, and everybody else was singing along, and it was honestly really sweet. It was really nice to see. And I've literally just remembered that incident now, and now that I think about it, that incident is a good way to describe Liam's effect on the smoking shelter when he went there. Again, he didn't go there all the time, he wasn't a regular, but when he did go down there, he would bring people together in that way, if you get what I mean. He would often, you know, with the regulars, they had their kind of small groups of people they were close with. They all knew each other, but, you know, they had their kind of people they were closest to than others. But when Liam came along, everybody just kind of forgot about their little groups, and they all became one big group because of him. So even though he didn't go there often, when he was down there, he had a pretty big impact on the people, you know? And, you know, I only spoke to him a handful of times, which is why I don't really know much about him. But my friend Michelle was much more closer to him than I was. And Liam was actually friends with a boy from my old school, the one we went to before moving up to college, if you know what I mean. He was friends with him and his partner. And he was such a kind of chilled out guy. He was so laid back. And I'm just remembering now again, he had this like signature look. He had this like long black coat with a matching black hat and these round glasses, and honestly, it suited him so well, I was jealous. Like, I would see that coat in the distance and I'd be like, oh, that's Liam. But yeah, Liam didn't go there often. He didn't go to the smoking shelters often, but when he did, he was the center of it. And one day, one morning actually, Michelle texted me. I woke up to a text from her. And in the text, she said that she'd be in college that day, but she wouldn't be going to any classes because her friend had died. And, you know, obviously I said, I'm so sorry. Who's the friend? Is it somebody we both know? And she said it was Liam. And as soon as I got that text, I checked Facebook. And the first thing I see is a statement, a status posted by Liam's friend, the boy who went to the same school as me. And in that statement, in that status post, he said that Liam had died from self-inflicted means. I think we both know why. I can't say the actual term. I wish I could, but I have to be careful. And he said that he messaged Liam the day before, and he asked him, hey, how are you doing? How's your mental health? Do you think your depression is getting better? And the next day, he was gone. And that friend was not the only person to make a post about Liam's passing. That friend's romantic partner, the person they were in a relationship with at the time, I think they still are now, made a post expressing how devastated they were about Liam's passing, and so many other people did as well. I can't even count how many statements and how many posts I saw dedicated to him. But that morning, I got that text from Michelle. I saw everything on Facebook, and then I went into college. And that day is a day I will never forget. And I know that sounds like an exaggeration, but really, I will never forget that day. When I went on campus, the most prominent feeling I remember was that the air felt heavy. And again, I know that sounds like an exaggeration, but I remember it clear as day. Just that feeling wherever I stood in the campus, things felt off. And I did go to the smoking shelter that day. I don't know if I went with Michelle or with Oliver, or with both of them, or with somebody else entirely. I can't remember who exactly I walked there with for the first time that day, but I did go down to the shelter, and it was completely crowded. There were so many people there, and there wasn't the usual, buzz of talking or, laughing or anything like that that we'd usually hear on the way to the shelter. Everybody there was in mourning. Nearly everybody was crying, and as we were walking up to the shelter, I saw a pile of flowers left by the shelter. There were just a pile of bouquets left by so many people. And when we actually got to the shelter, I saw that they tied ribbons on one of the pillars of the shelter as well. They tied multicolored ribbons with writing dedicated to Liam, saying things like "rest in peace," "we'll miss you forever," things like that, messages like that. But I did spend some time at the shelter that day. I spent some time mourning with my friends. But eventually I did leave to go to classes. I went to classes so that Michelle could catch up on work through me, if that makes sense. So she wasn't completely behind on the lesson. She was able to catch up later. And that day, people didn't really know what to do with themselves. I didn't. Nobody did. So I will never forget that day. Ever. But what surprised me the most about this whole situation was Oliver's reaction to Liam's passing. Oliver was just absolutely broken by Liam's passing. And he grieved so much for him. And Oliver told me himself. He told me he didn't understand why Liam's passing was hitting him so hard, because Oliver admitted himself that he didn't really know Liam like other people did. And so he couldn't understand exactly why he was feeling it so heavily. But he felt it. He was grieving so much for him that he had to miss classes. He was missing classes for weeks after. And I remember him having to send emails out to lecturers explaining everything, explaining what had happened, and he missed classes for weeks, I think maybe over a month. And it did surprise me just how much Liam's passing affected him. I just remembered somebody else. Oh, how could I forget to mention her? So, there was this girl in my tutor class. Her name is Chloe. And Chloe was really good friends with Liam. They had photography together, I believe. And sometimes me and Chloe would talk after class. And one day, this was before Liam passed away, one day she told me that she had a massive crush on Liam. And she wanted to tell him how she felt. I don't know if she ever got that chance. I don't know if she ever got that chance to tell him. And I didn't see much of her after what happened to Liam. So, what happened to Liam was my first experience with death. And everybody's reaction taught me something. It taught me that more people care about you than you think. And it applies to you as well. More people care about you than you think. I know it can be a bit hard to think about. It's easy to say that nobody cares, but a lot of people do. And there may be somebody in your life, somebody fleeting, who maybe you pass just briefly, maybe on a bus or on a train ride, or somebody you see regularly walking down the street every day, or just somebody who only has a fleeting appearance in your day-to-day life, who you think doesn't really care, but they actually do. If you were gone, that may hurt them as much as Liam's passing hurt Oliver. Does that make any sense? Liam was just a fleeting presence in Oliver's life, yet Oliver was completely broken when Liam was gone. And somebody out there may have that reaction to you being gone. And I know it can feel very lonely, because I've felt it too. I felt it a lot. I feel it somewhat day to day, but there are people who care about you, and there are people who will care and will be devastated if you were gone. But I am aware that there is this kind of, how do I put it into words? Whenever you see people, hear people talk about things like this, it is always that notion of people caring about you and people will be hurt if you were gone, which is a very true sentiment, don't get me wrong. But I did see somebody once say that you shouldn't just live for other people. You should also live for yourself. And I think it's important to address that too, because you should live for yourself as well. There are just the smallest of things, the smallest of feelings, and the smallest of sensations that are worth living for. Feelings like dogs barking, if you can hear that. Dogs are barking outside right now. Things like dogs barking, or seeing dogs like run around the field in a park somewhere. You know, things like how the trees move in the wind, how leaves fall off the trees and how they turn. There's the dogs. I don't know if you can hear them. And things like seeing the leaves fall off the trees and seeing them change colours with the seasons, and the sound of rain that we're hearing right now. There's so many small things like that that are also worth living for, because I know life can be painful, and it can hurt you and it can beat you down really bad. But it can also be beautiful. And I know this gets said every single time when talking about topics like this, but there are better times ahead. And I'm not going to say that everything's going to be easy, you know. There will be tough times, there will be difficulties, there will be stresses, but there is more to life than those negative moments. And I can promise you that amongst the clouds, there is the sun. It's not going to be dark forever. And I know our minds can be so cruel to us. And I just want to say to you that whatever your mind is telling you, it's not true. If you feel like a burden, if you feel like a failure, you are none of those things. If your mind is telling you you are a burden, you are not a burden on anybody. And if your mind is telling you you're a failure, that couldn't be further from the truth. If you've made mistakes, that's okay. There is no such thing as perfection, and it is okay to make mistakes. And just because you've made mistakes doesn't mean you're a failure. And I know our minds can tell us that we are not worthy. But let me tell you, you are worthy of love. You are worthy of care. You are worthy of kindness and compassion. You are a person, and you have inherent value and worth. You are worthy of everything good that this world has to offer, no matter how much your mind tries to tell you otherwise, and no matter how much the people around you may try to tell you otherwise. You are worthy of life, and you are worthy of love. And you deserve nothing less than that. And I don't know if you realize this, but I would miss you so much if you were gone. I'm so happy that we're both here right now and that we're having this conversation, and I'm so happy that we're spending time with each other like this. And you mean so much to me. I value you, I value your presence in my life, and I want you to stay. I want you to stay here. And I know life isn't easy. I know it can be difficult, and I know it's not always on your side, but like I said, there are more than just those bad times. There are better times ahead of you, and I know that seems so far away, but they are there. And you may not think it, but you are such a strong person. Again, I know you may not feel it, but you are so strong, and you can get through those tough times. I know you can. And again, you are not a failure, you are not a burden. You are none of those negative things that your mind or the people around you tell you you are. You are strong, and you are valued, and you are worthy of life, and you are worthy of love. You are worthy of living. And I love having you around. I'm so happy you're here right now. And other people are as well. I'm happy you're here. Other people are happy you're here. So please, if you are thinking of hurting yourself, please reconsider. Because your presence and your existence is so valued and is so treasured. So please reconsider, and please stay.